Antisemitism is on the rise in Europe. From Madrid to Malmo, Jewish are worried about their future in Europe. And how does young Jews view this current situation, how they are facing those problems? All these topics we are discussing today here at the European Parliament in Brussels with the two young activists. On my left, Rebeka Goba from the European Coalition for Israel, welcome. Dylan Bokler, a young member of the staff of the European Jewish Congress. And of course, we are joined by a very prominent member of the European Parliament, Bert-Jan Ruissen, who is also the Vice Chairman of the European Parliament delegation to the Israeli Knesset. Welcome. My name is Marco Gombacci, and this is the European Report. Let's start from you, Dylan. How is the life of a Jewish in one of the main European capitals? Are you facing any problems? Can you give us some example of the problems that you are facing here in Europe?
That's a very good question. I think being a young European Jew in the 21st century has its challenges. I think the most important one, and is the one that I faced in my time living in major European capitals like Brussels or Madrid, is being afraid of being openly of who you are, of being open of your Judaism. I think like for many European Jews, they feel threatened or they feel afraid of sharing who they are, not only to strangers, but also to their close friends. Sometimes for European Jews, engaging in some conversations, it feels for them to become like ambassadors or politicians that they need to defend, in some cases, all the Jews in the world, or also, for example, the state of Israel. Many people don't make the distinction between the state of Israel, Judaism, and we can see that a lot in university campus, that there are a lot of European Jews that feel afraid of going to classes, to showing up to the campuses because they feel afraid of demonstrations. And in my case, I felt that as well, like engaging in normal conversations in daily life. Of course, you can see that in more political movements, in demonstrations, in manifestations, with a very clear anti-Semitic message. We saw that in Germany the last weekend, that there were like chants against Jews. So I think like for a youth person, the most difficult thing is to who say that you are a Jew.
And have you ever faced, you personally, a case of anti-Semitism, you or some friend of yours?
I think like most of the anti-Semitism I felt comes more from the ignorance of the people I encountered. I think there are different kinds of anti-Semitism, and there is a lot of anti-Semitic rhetoric going around still in the 21st century. So in my case, when I met new people, young Europeans, in university campuses or also here in Brussels, they have many preconceived ideas of what means being a Jew. They don't know the diversity, the complexity of Judaism. Sometimes they only understand it as a religion, but they don't know how diverse is the communities around Europe. So in my case, I had many discussions, sometimes when I were like speaking to them about my Judaism or about dinners, my Passover dinners or Rosh Hashanah dinners, I ended up like discussing about Israel. So that's a thing that usually happens to youngsters, that they...
Also among the circle of your friends, this happens, no?
Of course. Many people have preconceived ideas. According to official statistics, only 4% of the European population are fully aware of what Judaism really is. And also we see statistics that the memory of the Shoah is fading away. Less and less young people know what happened during the Holocaust. And this has an impact in the everyday life. So sometimes I feel that I need to become, and for me sometimes I am proud of, to become the person to explain what Judaism really is and the complexity about it.
That's very, very interesting. Mr. Ruissen, you are a politician, you are a member of the European Parliament. What is your perception about anti-Semitism in Europe? What is the European Union doing about it? How to fight anti-Semitism?
Yes, it is indeed an issue. I have big concerns about it, and what you just told us, I hear that quite often when I speak to people from the Jewish community. how difficult it is. We are living here in Europe in what we call a peaceful society, but on the other hand, the reality is that a lot of people in Europe don't feel safe. There's a lack of respect for each other, and especially in relation to Jewish people. There's so many, let's say, disrespect and anti-Semitism. So yes, that's an issue of great concerns also in the European Parliament. So what do we have to do? I think different things. First of all, I think we have to improve our data collecting, because a lot of anti-Semitic incidents are still unrecorded. Secondly, I think we need to realize that it is a responsibility of all levels of the government to act. Also civil society, but also at the level of schools. And I would also like to underline the importance of education. We have now a discussion with young people, and I really believe that young people, the new generation, they can play a crucial role in let's say, changing the situation. So let's start with, let's say, good education everywhere in Europe.
And there is also a lot of anti-Semitism online. Is like the European Union trying to do something like to fight also anti-Semitism online?
Yes, that's indeed one of the elements in this strategy of the Commission. To work also on awareness about what is happening in the digital world. We see a lot of hate speech, and we have to work on that. And it must be clear that every form of anti-Semitic content that's unacceptable. We have to fight against that.
And have you ever witnessed some example of anti-Semitism here in the European Parliament? Probably in some speech of other member of the European Parliament, or some debates that were oriented in an anti-Semitism way?
Well, recently we had the report of Amnesty International about Israel, accusing Israel of being an apartheid state. In my opinion, that's really a negative report. It don't give a good picture about the real situation. And we have raised questions about that report here in the Parliament, and to ask a reaction of the High Representatives on that. Because I see also anti-Semitic elements also in that report. That's just one example. Exactly what you said, it's so difficult for people to see a difference between, let's say, the state of Israel on the one and the Jewish people, Jewish life, Judaism. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting topic. Rebeka, you are Christian. You are working for the European Coalition for Israel, that one of his main tasks is to fight anti-Semitism. But why, for you, according to your opinion, why a Christian should be involved in the fight against anti-Semitism?
Yes, you're totally right, and that is one of our main objectives in ECI. And when I hear what Dylan is sharing, I understand that this problem cannot only be a Jewish problem. It cannot be that it's only their responsibility to raise awareness and alarm us and share how how this problem is on the rise. So that's why and the mission of ECI since its founding has been to be this other voice, non-Jewish, non-Israeli, uniquely European voice here in the capital of Europe that stands with the Jewish people and really raises the awareness, showing them that we as Christians as well and Europeans, we are with them in these times.
And this is quite very interesting, because probably if the defense of the Judaism, the fight against anti-Semitism comes also from some Christian side, the people will not accuse immediately someone to defend Israel. So there will be a sort of difference between the two different actions. Dylan, do you feel that the European youth is, generally speaking, aware of the anti-Semitism in Europe? Do you think that the youth are involved in the process on the fight against anti-Semitism?
I think there are worrying statistics by the European institutions regarding the involvement on the youth on the fight against anti-Semitism, and also the general knowledge that exists about what happened during the Holocaust and also on the anti-Semitism trends. So from my personal perspective, I think the European youth has to be more involved in the fight against anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is not only a threat for European Jewry, it's a threat for democracy, for the values upon the European institutions were built after the Second World War. So I think nowadays we see a lot of challenges, as the MP said, in the online world. And many, as we know, youngsters is their general habitat nowadays. So I think there should be a major realization of the dangers that exist in the social networks. And I think the youth is not only the future. We always receive this kind of statement, but we're also the present. And anti-Semitism is on the rise. And of course, we need to change what will happen in the future when many Holocaust survivors will not be with us. And also when what happened during the Second World War will be like a memory. But we also need to do it in the present. So I think the youth, all the youth, Christian youth, the Muslim youth, everyone needs to be involved in this fight against anti-Semitism and against discrimination in general.
And you, as a European Jewish Congress, are you already speaking with this, with other youth associations for this task or not?
The European Jewish Congress has been fostering not only interreligious dialogue between a lot of organizations, but has been working since its inception with the youth of the European Jewry in every country that we represent. We represent more than 40 countries, not only in Europe, but outside the European area. And we have been working and hearing their concerns and preoccupations. For example, some months ago, we received a delegation from the European Union of Jewish Students. So they came to us with their concerns. We are based in Brussels, so we are their representation, and we need to fight and push for their desires. Because of course, sometimes we think about the anti-Semitism as something more general, but it has an impact on everyday life. So the European Jewish Congress is in permanent contact with their affiliates, but also with the Jewish representation of the Jewish communities.
That's very interesting. And you say something that, in my opinion, is very. First of all, the most important is the interreligious dialogue, and this is extremely important. And the other one is always to defend the religious freedom. Yeah. And this stick with the Jewish, with the Christians in the Middle East, and with others. It's very important that Europe should defend those values, because if we don't defend those values, we cannot speak about human rights in other parts of the countries. If we don't defend the human values in Europe. How is the situation with anti-Semitism in the Netherlands? Are there some cases, are some examples of anti-Semitism action from different groups? And what is the Dutch government doing to fight the anti-Semitism?
Well, also in the Netherlands we see a lot of anti-Semitism. It's a shame. What we see, for example, is attacks against a restaurant in Amsterdam for several times. It happened several times. It's just one example. But also the fact that the Jewish school in Amsterdam, and also synagogues, they need security measures. Otherwise, it's not safe for them. So that's also another clear example that the situation also in the Netherlands is really concerning. Yeah, what are we doing in the Netherlands? What we did, for example, is we appointed a special envoy on the fight against anti-Semitism. I think that's a really good initiative, and the Commission urged also other member states to appoint a special envoy. He can work on, well, let's say, more awareness about what is happening. But yeah, special envoy is just one thing. we have to change the society. We have to change the mind of people, the heart of people. And how to change that? I think it all starts also maybe in family life. What are we teaching our children?
Education.
Education. Well, but education, then you are speaking about school level. But it starts already at the level at home. What does your parents tell you? Does I learn to respect each other? That these are the basic values we have to work on.
Yeah, totally agree. One question. All the attacks, now let's speak about the Netherlands because you are a Dutch member of the European Parliament. All those attacks to the Jewish restaurant, Jewish cemeteries that there are like in Netherlands, also in France, in Italy and other countries, from which group they are arriving? Because probably there are some far-right extremism, but there are some other religious extremism that are attacking, or like a lot of ignorant people that are attacking a Jewish symbol all around Europe. Which are the groups that are doing those attacks in Netherlands?
I have the impression that anti-Semitism is coming from different groups. From far right, maybe also extreme left, talking about too negative about the state of Israel. But also in the Muslim world, I think. So you can't say, well, it's just coming from one category. I think it's in different parts of our society, unfortunate presence. Yeah.
No, that's even more difficult because when we have to fight against anti-Semitism, if it comes only from one group,
yes.
It will be easier because you have one strategy for those group from one group. If you have different groups, and sometimes those groups are mixing, and this is extremely worrying. Also, sometimes far left, far right, they are join their forces in the anti-Semitism perspective. So this is even more difficult. And for this reason, I think that and for also other reasons that the MEP Ruissen said, for the education, for the family, etc., is extremely important, the youth. But how can the youth be more involved, the European youth, how can be more involved in the fight against anti-Semitism?
Yeah, so as we see in these discussions today among young adults, it's environmental threats, we have inequality. So as you say, we need to be more involved, and that's what I also see, because all these debates that are more popular among young adults now, they overshadow the anti-Semitism, sometimes even contradict. So I think for us, as young adults here, as young activists, we have to be more outspoken and join this debate that is happening, and also to really amplify this problem of anti-Semitism. But of course, I have to repeat again, it's the social media. And nowadays, it's so much easier for us, each of us, to become activists and have a global platform any minute accessible. And what is important is that we're not only reactive, but also proactive. So not only reacting to what we see online, but that we also use social media, use our platforms, our circles to be proactive and to produce content that is correct, that spreads correct information, debunks myths about the Jewish people. So I think that is what we can do. And of course, cooperating as Christians in different communities, I think it's important that all these faith communities come together to really address this problem.
Do you speak also with the big tech companies, the big social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and maybe you can give also some suggestions probably to how to fight online anti-Semitism? Have you already spoken with these big tech companies? Are you in dialogue with them or not yet?
I know that the European Parliament has been in dialogue, and national governments have been in, and I've seen some improvements. For example, on the platform called TikTok, there is there's this feature that recognizes whenever there is a specific word mentioned, they fact check. The app fact checks that content immediately. So I think it's important for these tech companies, these social media platforms, to invent more features because there's so much content, you cannot really follow every word that is being said online. But if they improve these features that detect this hate speech and take it down on time before it goes viral and is exposed to a lot of teenagers and even kids and young adults. So I think it's important for them to develop these tools, and also for us to be active. And of course, we have the opportunity to report different accounts or content. So I think, there's a lot that tech companies can really do in this, and there should definitely be a dialogue and cooperation.
Very, very good. And as a young activist, Dylan, are you already speaking with some government where they were facing a lot of problem of anti-Semitism, like for example Sweden or some Nordic countries that there were a lot of problem of anti-Semitism attacks against the Jewish, but probably now they are doing something?
Yeah, of course. I think 2021 was a very important year for the European Jewry, not only because the European Commission presented its first strategy to combat anti-Semitism, that showed the concern that exists in all the European member states on this threat. 15 years ago, it would be impossible to think that we will have like all these tools. Also, there were resolutions from the European Council, and also the European Parliament was pushing forward to be like a structural answer to this problem. Now what we need is implementation, and we are seeing that many European countries are selecting their envoy against anti-Semitism. They're presenting their own strategy to combat anti-Semitism, because that's what's written in the European strategy of the European Commission, that every member state needs to present their strategy at the end of this year, if I am not mistaken. And for example, Sweden, that is a country that has faced rising anti-Semitism, in 2021, they organized the Malmo Forum on combating anti-Semitism, that many European Jewish organizations were present there, but not only from the European Jewry, because as we said before, this is a problem of all the European continent, and an attack against the Jews is an attack to European democratic values. So we've been seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, that's true, but also at the same time, the national governments and also the European Union is responding. Now we have to see if there are going to be clear actions against it, because of as we know, words, sometimes they can be taken by the wind.
As you said before, one thing is having the strategy, and another thing is to implement it. So that's where the civil society should step in and try to make, and not all just the civil society, but especially the youth needs really to play, I think, a very important role on this. Mr. Ruissen, yesterday there was a big election in Europe. Macron won the French elections, but France in the past years faced a lot of cases of anti-Semitism. Personally, I remember that I was in different cemeteries a bit outside Paris to report about those attacks in the Jewish cemeteries in France. And as you said, there are different groups they are attacking, because there was a swastika, and there was the written death to Israel, made probably, according to the police report, by far-left extremists. So this is a... Do you have an appeal to make to President Macron? Do you have something to say to the leader of the countries, the European countries, how to implement the strategy against anti-Semitism? Because I think that it will be extremely, extremely important also to let clear to all the people that can be punished if they do an attack against religious, against the Jewish, against Christians, against all the symbols. So do you have an appeal? Do you have something to say to him if you meet in the next couple of minutes the French president?
Yes, well, first of all, I would like to say to him, well, please act, and when there is an attack or something like that, or there is anti-Semitic content on Facebook, please act. But in addition to that, I would also like to say to Macron, it's also really important to work on, let's say, a kind of a feeling also within the Jewish community that the Jewish people still feel themselves, let's say, as part of Europe. Jewish has a long history in Europe. And we have to make clear to the Jewish community, yes, you are a main part of the European society. And you have the possibility, let's say, to be yourself in Europe and also to follow your own let's say rules or habits, or do you understand what I mean? Also speaking about ritual slaughter, for example, sometimes we are, I think, too strict, and it's really important to work on freedom of religion, also within Europe and also for the Jewish community.
Absolutely, absolutely. You say something about the slaughtering of
Yes.
the branding, etc. The European Parliament did something, no? In the last year, in the last couple of years, there was a big debate in the European Parliament about this, no?
Yes, but in the end, it is up to the member states to decide on what is acceptable for us and what's not. So you see a lot of, let's say, there are different
competencies,
different legislations within between member states.
So you would say to President Macron, create a network, so speak with other member states to help the Jewish to live their Jewish life in Europe.
Yes, indeed.
Because a Europe without Jewish is not anymore Europe.
Right.
And this is extremely important.
Yeah.
And with this sentence, we end this monthly European report. I would like to thank Dylan, Rebeka, and the MEP Ruissen for speaking with us about anti-Semitism in Europe, and see you next month. Thank you very much.
Alpha